I guess this is where I add myself. I don't have the fancy audio for where Crumpy does the introduction. Crumpy will not be with us today. He, just wore himself out, so he's taking a little bit of a break. I have in the back room waiting for us. Actually, I got a really good bunch of guys today. So quickly assembled. Garret was planned, but I quickly assembled. I'll bring them in one by one. Let's see, I got to click the buttons here because I'm running the show. I got Jason the Rogue Banshee of Freedom Crew University, and whatever else, we'll get the whole intro in. I've got Cron, fellow Floridian. Actually, any wind, hurricane, anything?
Yeah, we got some trees down in the backyard, but nothing too crazy.
So. Oh shoot! Okay, yeah, I'm like way the heck out of the storm, and it blew a bit, and some crap came down from the palm trees, but
yeah,
nothing landscapers.
We call it the south side of it, so we got some microbursts, a little bit of we had like a little tornado come through about 4 a.m., but other than that, pretty relaxed.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna bring in the guest of honor. So we got Garret from Defense Distributed. You are a software developer, lead software developer. What are we calling you?
I guess lead software developer is probably the most accurate term. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah. Thanks for jumping on. So what kind of software are you doing? Are you doing the UI for the Ghost Gunner, the software to do the cut codes, or what?
Yeah, kind of all of the above. So I do I'm the manager of the team that builds the DD cut software for the Ghost Gunner. Most of the websites that we have, I've either built or have led the teams that have built them. So Ghost Gunner, and of course, most notably, probably the DefCAD website is one of my major projects. That's what keeps me busy on a day-to-day.
Oh wow! Okay. And definitely, I got to tell you, I don't know if I submitted this as a bug or something like that, but last time I cut like 4 or 5 AR-15s, the stupid Mac I was using between like there's 2 different sleeps that it'll go into.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh God, it took me forever to figure out how to turn them off. I'm like, if you guys threw some code in there for that would be fantastic.
Just add a little mouse wiggler code so that the mouse jumps around whenever the application's open.
Wait. Nobody has a keyboard jiggler.
No, that
you don't even need that. You can just get an old cell phone. They have a mouse jiggler on YouTube. It just moves. And you just put your optical mouse on it and just jiggle.
So many.
You can see him vigorously taking notes down there.
Honestly, we should just build a mouse jiggler into the DD Cut software.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, there you go.
Probably the right move.
It just add little pixel by pixel. Nothing crazy.
Either that, or I got to open another window with the 24-hour fireplace playing on YouTube.
Oh, there you go.
Pretty aesthetic, right? It's a good way to mill guns.
Yeah.
We've actually been working with a guy recently who's been really helpful, who's really helping us dig into, because there's a core problem with communication between the Ghost Gunner and a computer, right? There's a core problem relating to timeouts and differentiating what a timeout means. Is it because the computer went to sleep, or is it because the Ghost Gunner board crashed in some way? The board almost never crashes, but you can't assume it never will. Right. And so you have to find some way to differentiate them. And that's something we've been working on for quite a while now. We've got some guy who's helping us with it pretty directly. So I'm hoping that in one of our next releases, we'll have something that at least improves that situation somewhat.
I dig it.
So from Ghost Gunner 1 to 2 to 3 to 3S, can you go over like hardware and firmware like changes? What makes the 1 different from the 2 and going down the line?
Yeah, you bet. So the 1, obviously our first iteration of the mill, it was sized very specifically to do an AR-15 lower receiver, right? It was conceived of as, this is a machine that will let you do your AR-15 lower receiver. And of course, it always was a general purpose CNC mill. Every iteration of the Ghost Gunner has been programmable, has been open source. But that first iteration was, okay, we're going to get it just good enough to be able to do that AR-15. We'll be able to cut aluminum aggressively enough to cut out that pocket, and that'll be sufficient for the 1. Then we released the 2, and the original 2 was sized up so that we could do AR-308s, right? It had to be larger in order to fit the 308 lower in there. Otherwise, it was pretty much the same machine originally. But then during the 2's lifespan, we introduced an upgraded spindle, which made it both more powerful and more precise. so it was able to do things like the 1911. And that spindle was you could backport it onto the Ghost Gunner 1 as well. So I think,
cool.
Yeah, I think most ones at this point that are out there have probably been upgraded to that new spindle. Makes them a little bit more powerful, a little bit more precise as well. But otherwise, the 2 and the 1 were very similar machines in terms of their core design. The 2 was a little bit larger, the spindle was better, but it still, you put them next to each other and they look very similar. The 3 is our hardware engineer has described the 3 as the machine he always wanted to make. Like, we were successful enough with the 1 and the 2 where it's like, now we can really do this, and we can make a machine that's powerful enough not just to cut the aluminum you have in these AR receivers or the aluminum 1911s, but to actually start cutting steel. So the 3 is even larger than the 2. It's got, what is it, like 4 times more powerful of a spindle. It's able to deliver a lot more torque. It's still, again, these are all open source machines. They're all programmable, but the 3 introduces a couple convenience factors for programming it as well. And that's what we've been using since, right, is the 3. Moving on to the 3S, right? When the 3 is released, it has a more powerful spindle, but it's still what's called, open loop, which means that the spindle doesn't know how fast it's actually going. So you can tell it go 8,000 RPM and it'll try to do that, but it doesn't actually know, am I going 8,000 or not? We had all the hardware in there to make that what's called closed loop, which means it can track how fast it's spinning, which is important to get, optimal cutting speeds. We had all the hardware in there for it, but the software was incomplete. Fast forward to the 3S, and we get the software finally perfected for that closed loop spindle. And the 3S incorporates that. And because the hardware was there for the original 3s, the 3S upgrade could be applied to the 3 as well. For that.
Now, is that a software patch or what is it?
It's where it gets confusing, right? Because yes, the main thing to my mind for the 3S is that software patch, right? So you open up your DD cut, you download the new firmware, and your 3 gets the 3S software patch. There were some hardware changes as well made to the mills at that same time. So every mill sold after we announced the 3S had a couple hardware changes, which made it more rigid, which added some more quality of life improvements. So if you go and buy what we call a 3S right now, that'll have both the software and the hardware changes. If you just want to get that software change for your original 3, you can do that as well for free. And you can even upgrade that original 3 to a 3S hardware-wise as well by sending it in.
I know all right. So it's not like you can send me parts and I pop rivet them in.
Yeah, we were looking at ways to try to make it a home upgradable kit, and unfortunately, we couldn't find a way that we were confident that customers would all be able to do that successfully. So you do have to send in the 3 to get the hardware upgrade. But by all means, everyone with a 3 should upgrade their software to get that 3S spindle control. That's what really makes the magic happen, and that's how we're able to do things like cut 4140 for our most recent G0 project.
So could I cut a steel 1911 with the upgraded software on a 3?
Absolutely. Yep.
Wow.
I believe 4 or 5 months ago, we put out cut code to do steel 1911s as well. Prior to that, they all had to be aluminum. The code was optimized for aluminum, but now we support steel as well for 1911s.
Oh, cool. Okay, because that's, I've been slowly working towards that. With work, I've got to take 2 weeks off every 6 months. I'm like, I'm just going to take next week off. I'm like, all right, now I'm going to blow the dust off the 3S, grab everything I need, and, hopefully I have a couple of play days that I can, besides the honeydews. So I just wondering, out of, Jason, have you used a Ghost Gunner?
No, I have not.
Oh, really? Okay. And Sander, you've done Ghost.
There's
you got one,
Ghost
right?
Gunners in Montana.
I've got one. I've done a couple of the AR00, AR0 now. I've actually designed a competition lower for it, which I should upload to DevCat at some point here.
We gotta get that up there, man.
It's got a nice flared magwell. You guys will like it. But yeah, I actually, right before I had to go on a business trip last week, but right before I left, I got my Glock 0 kit in the mail. So that's probably on this weekend's project list, weather permitting and power stability permitting, because that's not something I want to get halfway through and then lose power. So,
well, I run a UPS on my Ghost Gunner.
I run
all my
UPS
3D printers,
but I've been told it's a pretty lengthy operation. All in all,
The G0 requires a bit of a time investment.
Yeah, so I'm gonna try and tackle that this weekend. I've also got a backlog of a few other fun little projects that need to get done too. So mine will be running all weekend from the sounds of it.
Right on, man.
That's awesome.
So the interesting thing, like you did the Glock, the G0, and it's like the ATF has been going back and forth with the frame and receivers, and it's like, wow, the G0 is a great thing. Not so much. Wow, it's a great thing. Not so much. Wow, it's a great thing. Again, I don't know if I'm going to get too anarchist. I'm not exactly anarchist, but one, laws.
How can we improve that?
Laws need to be easy to follow, and two, consent of the governed. It's like, really, guys? Like, I talk to well-informed gun guys, and they have no idea what's going on with frames and receivers or pistol braces, and that's the crazy thing. That you miss a news article, and all of a sudden you're a criminal.
Well, let's not pretend like this is not intentional, right? Like the uncertainty is the point.
And you know what? See, I think I'm a good guy, and I think everybody else is a good guy. I project that, and yeah, you're right. You're right. I mean, of course it's intentional. That's the crazy thing. So,
and that's the sad thing, is that they do write this intentionally to trap you, because even if you read the rules, they're open to so much interpretation that's where they're getting you on, right? It's like, well, I read the rule, yeah, but we interpreted something, a different way. Or they'll say, you had intent. It's like, how do you know what I intended to do? Well, because you have this pistol brace, you have intent to have an SBR. And I mean, let's face it, that's what the government wants, is they want it to be they want it to be their way all the time, and them to be able to change what they think at any given moment.
Intentionally vague. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I just find it amazing that if I always believe, I'm a big believer in reciprocity, and if I acted as the government did, making up the rules on the fly, or whether it's like insuring the FDIC, if I ran a home insurance company the way they ran the FDIC, I'd be in jail. Or if I ran a pension fund, they ran Social Security, I'd be in jail. I'd have a life sentence in jail if I ran a private business the way the same government version of it was run.
Well, the government has its own monopoly on Ponzi schemes, right?
Indeed.
I mean, that's what it is. Is they're a monopoly on Ponzi schemes.
No.
I think there's a political philosophy, and you'd have to get coded to tell you who actually said this. I don't remember who it was, but the basic idea is that the real definition of power is control of the exception, right? So it's not necessarily being able to force people to do something, but to excuse people from what would otherwise be a consequence, right? So the government sets their rule, but they're able to allow who gets to not follow that rule, right? And that's really what it's all about.
Yeah, and I'm the longer this goes on, and the more legal battles, and the more, pick a choice word for it, keeps progressing and going on. I'm just all for this mass non-compliance at this point. Like, that's really what's going to save us from this. Is the more we cooperate, the more they're going to take away from us. And we saw that during COVID, right? The more you cooperated, the more they dragged it on, right?
Oh yeah.
At the end of the day, it's stuff like the GG3 and 3D printers that are going to make this so untenable for them that they just can't even keep up with it, right?
Right.
And that's the whole point, right?
The uncertainty,
in my mind anyway, is just to make it completely untenable. It's a non-win battle for them. They can't possibly catch everybody.
The uncertainty approach relies on people attempting to comply in good faith, right? So what can I have an 80 or can I not have an 80? Can I have a pistol brace? Can I not have a pistol brace? Like, The uncertainty works if you try to actually comply with it. If you instead say, I don't care about compliance anymore, I'm simply going to do what I want and accept the consequences, then the uncertainty approach no longer works. Can I recommend that? That's up to everybody to determine what their risk tolerance is there. But at this point, it's a very Jungerian approach, right? Like a forest rebel approach, to simply disengage from the game they're trying to play.
Mm-hmm.
And I've met a lot of people. I have a lot of friends that were very middle of the road, would never cross the street without the little, walking guy up there, that are now going, I've tried my whole life to play by the rules, and they just keep moving the goalpost. It's like, at this point, how are we even supposed to play by the rules if we don't know what the rules are from a day-to-day basis? So I think they're pushing people more towards the other side of that line by making things so difficult to, and again, it's probably by design, but at the end of the day, I think it's backfiring on them. Well, pretty much everything they're doing is backfiring on them these days, but a lot of folks that I know that would not be.
Oh, hold on. Speaking of backfiring on them, I'll have to put this
here
on.
We go. A lot of people that would normally be the first ones to follow the rules are now going, yeah, screw it. I just don't care anymore. We've tried to cooperate, and at the end of the day, it's just become too untenable.
And I think, like you were saying, is, during the COVID days, a lot of people woke up. The problem is that people have a very short attention span. A lot of people woke up. Some people are going back. Okay, things are back to normal. But some of those other people are like, well, wait, we got fed a line of crap, and now I'm paying attention more. So no, I'm not going to, I'm not going to put a mask on, and I'm going to buy a 3D printer. So there's nothing you can do about it, right?
Yeah, I think Michael Malice says that, like, if you take the long view, right, if you consider, like, 10 years ago or even 5 years ago, if you ask the average, right-wing conservative, like, do you trust the police or not? It would be, well, yes, of course I trust the police, right? And that is no longer the case. Like, at the very least, there is a healthy skepticism. And in many cases, like, it has gone a complete 180 to no, I absolutely do not trust them. Everything they say is a lie. And that is significant. I tend to be somewhat cynical, but that is a thing that we should be optimistic about, the fact that switch has occurred, and in so short a time.
And I agree with you. I was one of those people, and I was raised that way. It was always, trust the police. If you're ever in trouble, go to the police officer. That's a safe place, blah, blah, blah. Nowadays, I wouldn't go so far as to be full on, ACAB, but I am definitely skeptical of their motivations and their leadership, at least. I try not to judge anybody by, the group or the uniform that they wear, but you all have to start policing yourselves, no pun intended, or else we're going to start judging you as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we try to do that in the 2A community. We try to keep everybody, respectable and responsible. That's a big deal. That's a big mantra that we go through. And you think it would be the other way around, that, our elected officials would, even now, what I find amazing is, like, I never said that. It's like, and you replay the video of them saying that. It doesn't matter anymore. They just outright lie to you.
Well, it's like a few months ago on my podcast, I had a Canadian on. I'm like, okay, there's all this gun control going up in Canada. And we're talking.
Not coming for your guns.
Yeah, right. And we brought up the whole thing from Trudeau. Trudeau, there's an old video that's floating around from when he first started politics. Guns are part of Canadian culture, and no one's coming for your guns. And what did he just do?
Yeah,
just flat out outlawed handguns, and he would outlaw all guns if he could get away with it.
Yep. So I did want to exactly go down this rabbit hole. It's a great conversation. I did want to focus a little bit more on Garret and what he's up to and what he's got coming down the pike. So I guess as a nerd, where is it? What microcontroller drives the Ghost Gunner? And you say open source. Does that mean, like, hey, I could go to GitHub, download everything, build my own Ghost Gunner?
It's a good question. So yes, the actual mechanicals of the Ghost Gunner, the actual 3D models of it, are available for download. You can go to ghostgunner.net/downloads in order to pull those down. You theoretically could build your own Ghost Gunner. It would probably be quite the undertaking. We have a whole factory, not just to manufacture the parts, but also to assemble it, put it together, make it square. It's a bit of a big thing. It's a little bit harder than building a 3D printer. I would like someday to have a CNC machine that could be built at home in the same way a 3D printer could. And in any case, if you are a mechanical engineer, it is all out there if you want to get it. Same with the firmware. The firmware code is also out there for download. That being said, when we say the Ghost Gunner is open source, what we more mean is the fact that you can program it yourself. I think a lot of people think that, when you get your Ghost Gunner, you get your flash drive and it has all of our pre-made cut codes on there. And people think, oh, well, that's the only thing I can run on the Ghost Gunner. But it's not. You can write your own code for it. You can feed that code in there and you can get it to run. It doesn't have to be a gun part. It can be anything at all that you want to cut on that machine, you can do. And that's actually what I've been working on sort of in my spare time a lot lately is writing some of my own code for it to cut. I am cutting gun parts because that's what I'm interested in. But
Right.
Yes, that's some of the stuff that I've been doing lately.
So I know Mr. Snow was working on like a 0% 22 receiver.
Yeah. God, it's been a while since I've looked at that, but I think he might even be bringing that to the next big meetup, or at least something 22 that he's been working on. Yeah, a couple other people are working on their own 0% designs, or at least have been floating ideas. I know that there was a guy who was looking at creating his own fixturing on the Ghost Gunner. So, we sell those universal clamps, right, that we now use in a lot of our pre-existing cut codes, and people are finding ways to make the clamps themselves on the Ghost Gunner using a more basic form of fixturing, right? So that's been exciting to me to see people finally starting to actually not just use the Ghost Gunner to cut the codes that we sell them, but to write their own code for it also.
Well, and we've been seeing a huge influx in the print community of metal hybrids, which I think is hilarious because, when I first started building guns, it was all metal, right? If you wanted to do something like 0%, you had to get a flat, bend the flat, weld the flat. Then we kind of moved into like 80%, and then we went to printing, and now we're going back to like metal. We've transitioned back into like the hybrid metal stage, which is it's kind of good to see though, because I think we've found pretty much the upper limit of what you can do with plastic at this point. Probably we're dangerously close to that. We've embraced a lot of these filled filaments and high strength filaments, and your CF nylons, your glass filled nylons, all this good stuff. And I think we've really reached the pinnacle of what we can really do with just plastic. So going and, impregnating the plastic with some kind of metal inserts or structure is definitely the future. And if we can use something like a GG3 to cut the metal in-house right next to our printer and, make those things work together, then really the sky's the limit.
Absolutely. Do you mind if I go into this a little bit deeper? Because this is one of my main sort of interests is sort of the evolution of technology in GunCAD, right? So yeah, like Kron said, when 3D printed guns, really first, came about in 2012, 2013, right, with the Liberator, there was this idea that we're going to make it all out of plastic. And that was largely a political decision, right? To some degree, it was also just, this is the technology that we have, but we want to pursue being able to make everything in-house. Like, we don't even want to buy something from the hardware store. We just want to be able to make this in-house. And so that's why the Liberator was a fully plastic gun, not because it was the best DIY design, but because it made the political statement that it wanted to make. And as such, for like the first 2 or 3 years of 3D printed guns, you saw other people trying to do very similar things, right? Most of the really early 3D printed gun designs, they were trying to make them entirely out of plastic. And then over time, you start to see metal parts starting to come back in. But up until recently, those metal parts were usually you would go and buy it at the hardware store, or it would be like a gun part, like a bolt or a barrel. It wasn't so much the case that you were creating this metal part yourself in any meaningful way, outside of basic things like taking a drill bit for a firing pin and sort of filing it down. And yes, now I see this comment about like send cut send stuff. Right now we are getting to the point where people are starting to custom cut their own metal. And there's a big opening between, getting a CNC machine like the Ghost Gunner and not using metal at all. And that opening is being filled by services like Send Cut Send. There was a recently released tool called the Power Core, which is what's called an EDM machine. It's basically using electricity to cut out flat shapes that you could use. So yeah, there's a bunch of these techniques that are all being pursued at once. And like, yeah, we make the ghost gunner, and we think that people should get ghost gunners and start milling their own metal, but they should also be looking into these other approaches as well. Like I think I agree with Kron that we've kind of started to hit at least a wall with what we can do with 3D printers and hardware stores alone. There's a lot of stuff we can be looking into beyond that for the custom shaping of metal. Ghost Gunner is a part of that. Send Cut Send is a part of that. EDM is a part of that. There's techniques that we probably haven't even thought of that are a part of that. So I'm very excited to see what that brings.
Yeah, for sure. You summed it up perfectly.
Well, I like, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I think the ARC was the first. The ARC 9mm was the first 3D printed gun to use tension rods through it to hold it together. You know, that in my mind is like reinforced concrete. I'm like, wow, that's genius.
The tension rod thing is cool. Yeah, I'm not sure it was the first. Cool. Is there an earlier one, Karan?
I want to say J-Rod might have done it earlier with the Liberator.
Oh, well, yes, of course.
I think the Liberator, or his 12K is.
Yeah, but that's not technically yet. It's still technically in beta. Technically. But yeah, just like almost everything else that, you know, is innovative in GunCAD, I think Jeff Rod did introduce those threaded rods. They were on the Sumac too, and that was before the ARC, right?
Yeah, that was before the ARC.
That was the first time I saw it. So you got to be careful when you say things like first, because then Karan and
I get in trouble all the time, and I'm like, I just can't keep it straight anymore, y'all. Like,
Karan and I are just going to nerd out about it, like, oh, actually, you know, it was this.
Well, right.
But it's a good thing that we can't keep it straight anymore, right? Like before, it was like, yeah, there were 10 designs. We all know who worked on them. We all know who did it. Now there's like, you're probably getting more than 10 designs a day being uploaded to DevCAD. So
exactly,
it's a good problem to have. Like, I don't want to be able to name every design and who made it. Like, I want there to be so many that we can't even keep track.
There was a point where like I had a pretty decent idea of, you know, everything that was on DevCAD and, you know, all just the 3D printed gun designs out there. But at this point, like sometimes people have come to me and said, I found this design on DevCAD, you know, here's a question about it. And like, I didn't even know we had that on there. Like, hey, that's pretty cool. Let me check this out.
Well, I caught myself doing that at the airport the other day. I was just scrolling through the site like, I missed all of this, you know, like... There's been a huge burst of just independent developers out there lately too. People that I've never talked to or met, which is really weird because I feel like for a while there I at least knew everybody. Right. Now it's like there's a whole plethora of people that are just designing and building on their own that are, you know, just doing it solo and uploading their projects, and people are building off of it, and it's great to see.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, the most important thing you said there is that they are now uploading them, because it has always been the case that there have been people who were doing their own thing, right? Like you go to Weapons Guild and you'll find these ancient threads of people just, hey guys, here's something I built. And, you know, they never release the design, right? Yeah. People are still off doing their own things as well. They should, right? You don't have to go join a group to do GunCAD, but they're releasing their designs. They're getting them out there in some way. That's a very healthy development.
So does everybody here know what a Monty Griffin is?
You got me.
Okay,
I think I drove one of those last summer.
No.
Isn't that the show with the coconuts?
No, the Monty Griffin was a bolt action 50 cal, and you could buy a kit. And the ATF finally got the guy, but that was something. So even going
get him
back,
for solvent traps.
You know, just stupid stuff. A kit for a firearm, if you're doing the major portion of the work, seems very reasonable. So there was like a book, and I think you could, it was kind of, you know, this is pre-open source type stuff. I think you could buy the book, or you could buy the book and the parts from the guy. And the ATF, I forget what year it was, but even going back, like, I believe stuff like this, Walter is in the chat, I don't know if he's still in the chat, was like on IRC, guys would be nerding out about how to do a 50 cal on an AR. That was the deer in the headlights look on the Monty Griffin question. Okay. So yeah, there have been people working on this, and you know, hey, back when you had a machine shop and a bunch of cool tools, and you know, and by that significant investment, I think who here doesn't have a bamboo printer? I mean, I got a bamboo. Jason's got a bamboo. You got
I don't have one yet.
Xander. You got a
Yeah,
what?
no, I gave in. I bought one. So
You got a bamboo.
yeah,
Hey,
I've
and
got
I'm
one
like,
next to the Voron.
so, yeah, I was gonna say Voron. I know you did a Voron. So we all, 3D printing. The cost of entry went down to, what is it?
$100.
Yeah,
It's like
basically
$100 for an
Micro
MP3.
Center $100 Ender 3, and which was a good printer after some tuning. You could get lucky right out of the box and have it work right, but the bamboo, I'm like, $600-700. You got a fantastic effing printer. It's pretty amazing what that thing does.
Yeah, the new P1S too. At the price point that they brought those in at, it's almost unbeatable.
Yes.
And I was honestly, it's annoying how easy it is to use.
Yes,
Right? It annoys me when I got it out of the box and I set it up and I went slice and print. I'm like,
it's insulting. It's
I
like
was
I spent my life knowing how 2-barrel, 4-barrel carburetors, vacuum secondaries work, points, condensers, magnetos. So then everybody says, "Oh yeah, we got coilover plug, direct ignition, and multi-port fuel injection." It's like, what?
No, I know. I felt like the old guy yelling about manual transmissions or something. I was like, this is ridiculous. Because half
You
my
mean you
brain
didn't
is,
hit the spark advance lever on that, Sonny? You got to retard it. And
half
hit
my
the
brain is
choke.
full nerd, and it's like you need to know how to build and print. Build your printer and tune your printer. And then the other half of me is I want this to have the lowest possible entry point of knowledge possible, so that anybody can do it. So ultimately, that latter part is what matters. But still annoyingly easy to use.
Yes. Yeah, and so when people come to me, they're like, "Oh, hey, how do I get started?" I'm like, "Just save your money, get a bamboo. Don't even
because the easier you can get them into that entry level, the more productive that they'll become in inside. I don't want to say society, but in our culture here, of okay, cool. Now I can do it. Even if they're not going to design, they're going to talk about how easy it is to get in, and that might be the next person. When I wrote my letter to the ATF about the frame receiver rule is, you have no idea about, the person the home builder right now just might be the next John Browning. We have no idea where that's going to go. So don't stop it. I mean, we're going to advance this thing. Right. Let it advance, let it mature, and we have no idea where this is going to go.
And we're seeing this across the board now, right? Because when I first started doing this stuff, like you had to join a secret society and make an idol, and there was like all this stuff and hoops, and you had to like kiss people's ass just to get files. Now you can go on DefCAD, get your files, plug in your bamboo, and have a gun in like 4 hours. Like,
well, to follow up on that,
it doesn't get any better than that, right? Like
a large reason for why a lot of the early groups did, and to some degree still do today, like have all that upfront stuff, interviews and so on, is precisely because otherwise they're going to get flooded with people who are, how do I print? Why is my print coming out bad? Blah, blah, blah,
sure. Yeah.
If you think 5 years down the line where everyone's running the bamboo, like that just ceases to be a thing.
Exactly.
And as such, the conversation changes entirely. That's an exciting eventuality.
Yeah, no, I love it. I want that bar to be as low as possible so that anybody off the street goes, you know what, I do want a custom Glock, and just, what do they spend? Less than $1,000. They're all set up and they can just make whatever they want.
Right. The conversation moves from how do I print this existing design to how do I create my own design? And like we're in the midst of that transition right now. It's very exciting to imagine a future where that transition is completed.
And I've noticed that a lot of creatives are not terribly technical, right? Like the really, truly creative types, the artistic types don't really want to sit there and play with circuitry and try and figure out how to wire up a Voron, right? But if you take all that away, you make it easy for them to print, you make it easy for them to get the basic information, then you can really get the creatives in there to make new and interesting things out of the space. So I don't know. I'm just excited for the next couple of years here. Laws be damned. Like this is going to be hilariously fun to watch.
Absolutely.
The influx of people, because I think we're going to see more and more, we'll call them mainstream gun people getting into the DIY and the home build stuff because that bar is coming down, right? you don't have to be an uber nerd that knows how to program and flash firmware and do all this stuff,
Mhm,
right? You
mhm.
just need a credit card and an hour's worth of your time, and you're in, right?
Absolutely.
So
Well, Rich, I know that you can remember, a time when 80% were like, number one, why would you do an 80%? You're weird
Yes.
if you do an 80%. But number
Yes.
two, how do you do it? It's way too hard for me, right? I can't do it. And
Right.
eventually, over time, we get enough technological improvements and cultural acceptance to where,
Mhm,
okay,
mhm.
now it's the cool thing to do, and anyone can do it, and I can do it too, and I want to do it because it's a cool thing to do. Printing is undergoing the same thing.
yeah, and I still run into that because I still do, multi-gun matches monthly, right? And I go out there, and most of the people that I shoot with on a regular basis are used to me now, so they're kind of just excited to see whatever I brought that week.
Mhm.
But I still run into people that are like, "Is that printed? Is it going to blow up?" Like one day I had actually the very first match I ever showed up to, I had a P80 because I was like, I'm not going to push the envelope day one, right? I'm going to show up with my P80 and just, I think I did have an ARC with me. But I was shooting the P80 and the RSO was like, I've never seen one run all day. I'm like, this is
Really?
cake, dude. Wait until next time
Yeah.
I show up. Like, so it's slowly getting the word and the message out there that not all 3D printed guns are going to explode the first time you use them.
Right.
Because there's that weird stigma out there that you just can't seem to shake. So.
But like, it's surprisingly, I have a similar experience where before the last Makers match, I was taking my printed Glock out to my local just club match to practice with, and I was, first off, I didn't think people would recognize it because it's just a printed Chairman 1 Glock. I figured they would think it was just a Cerakoted frame or something, but no, sure enough, the first guy who saw it was like, "Holy shit, is that printed?" And I was like, "Oh boy, here it comes."
Yep.
But no, like he was cool with it. Everyone in the squad was cool with it. Like they were interested in it now, and that again, that wasn't the case 2 or 3 years ago. So we have come a long ways away from this idea that like everybody is going to think it's going to blow up. Some people still will. You'll never disabuse everyone of that nature, but it almost feels now like the majority are accepting that these are legitimate firearms that are as good as or can be as good as factory guns.
Yeah, because it's just like anything else that's custom. It comes down to the builder at the end of the day.
Right.
Yeah.
So I want to like kind of shift a little bit. As far as 3D printing goes, I mean, hey, I can design in fill in the blank different software. I get a file, an STL file, I throw it in the slicer, and then boom, I print. If I want to do something custom with the Ghost Gunner, what's that process and workflow look like?
It's a good question. And maybe I'll start by continuing the metaphor we had previously, where, you had 80s and they were hard at the beginning and they became easier. And then you had 3D printing, and 3D printing was hard at the beginning, no doubt. Like listen to Jeff Rod tell you about what it was like to 3D print back in 2011, right? But it became easier. Machining is going through a similar thing, right? Where at this time to machine something, it takes a little bit of complexity. It's easier than you think. But it still has some complexity. It's going to be more difficult than 3D printing. But over time, through the things that we're doing at DD and other people are working on this as well, it's also going to become easier. That being said, so let's talk about what it does look like right now to actually write your own code for the Ghost Gunner. Just like with designing something for a 3D printer, you'll start with a 3D model in Fusion 360, right? And how you can take an existing model, you can design it yourself. One of the things that I recently completed was designing cut code for the FMDA rails, right, for printed Glocks. And I started with just the FMDA rail model that was out there. So you're starting from the same place. With a printer, you just export that model, you throw it in your slicer, like you said, Rich. But for the Ghost Gunner, you instead, in the Fusion 360 software, you need to start going through and defining what are called toolpaths, where you're essentially saying, okay, I need to perform this particular kind of cut. Like, okay, the part is oriented in the machine this way, it's clamped down in this way, and given that, I can cut out this amount of metal in this particular way. And that probably sounds a little bit complicated. It's not as hard as it sounds. There's really maybe like 5 or 6 different kind of cuts that you'll just use over and over again, and you'll sort of learn, oh, given this situation, I want to use this cut, right? But you set up those toolpaths. The other major thing you need to be able to do is, okay, given the material I'm working with, is this aluminum? Is this steel? what tool am I using? You need to assign what are called feeds and speeds, which are, how fast does the machine cut? How fast does the tool spin? Once again, we're sort of developing an internal guide of, okay, for the Ghost Gunner, here's good feeds and speeds for aluminum. So I don't need to calculate these myself. I can just apply them, right? These are the sorts of things that over time will make machining easier. But
So
you
now,
apply those. Yeah, go ahead, Kron.
I was just going to say, do you have a cheat sheet for the Ghost Gunner of this is what we recommend, speeds and tooling?
Yep, I've got an internal one. In that cheat sheet, I've got a column that says confidence level, so I can say, hey, I'm pretty confident of these. I'm not very confident of this one. So it's certainly not something that I feel like 100% confident in totally. But we do have such a thing, right? It is coming along.
Right. I was just going to say, if you were to produce that at when you get into that 90s range on something, that would probably help.
There's also speeds and feeds calculators out there, because like back when I did I did the first MUP1 video, no one was talking about speeds of drill drill presses and stuff, and I did all the calculations and put that into that video there, because people were just you have to understand the size of the mill or the drill, because the calculation's the same whether it's a mill or a drill. And then you also have to understand the hardness of the material that you're drilling or milling out of. And then you just throw the stuff in there, and they have kind of guidelines. Like if it's stainless steel, it's, this range here, you put this in here, and then it'll just calculate it out. It's not hard to figure that stuff out. It's, if you just Google a speed and feed calculator, you'll have pages of them that'll pop up.
Absolutely. There's one called G-Wizard that we use internally, which I think is a good one.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you get your speeds and feeds, you get your tool paths defined, and it's decently visual. Like you'll be able to see in Fusion, okay, here's how the tool will actually move. And after just doing this for a little bit, you'll very quickly start to recognize, oh yeah, that's a good tool path. Or you'll say, oh, I see something wrong here. I need to fix this before I actually try cutting it. In any case, ultimately, you'll then export that code out of Fusion, and it'll be a G-code file, just like the G-code file you send to your printer. And then it's a matter of feeding that into your Ghost Gunner. You'll need to know how to fixture the thing down onto the plate of the Ghost Gunner, right? So we have these universal clamps that I've been trying to make as much use of as I possibly can. So you'll design your code such that the part is being held in those clamps, as an example, right? So you'll need to learn how to fixture that down. From there, though, it's just a matter of doing your probing, which again is it takes a little bit of learning to do that, but it's not so hard. And then you can run your code. So more complicated than printing, no doubt. And I'm not sure I did the best job of describing it, but it's simpler than you think. I know that before I started doing this, I felt that this was like kind of like a dark art or like a magic. But no, it's very achievable. And I think that most people who have even a little bit of decent technical competence and are willing to put in just a little bit of work could learn how to do it.
Yeah, I like it. I want to dig more into that because like I said, I think we've really reached the peak of, plastic only designs or even hardware store designs. We can only get so far with threaded rod and hose clamps, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I think that getting into this custom millwork, or Sencut Sen has been a blessing, but I personally don't want to order anything, right? I want to be able to do it all in my garage. Like that's really the ultimate goal, right?
Absolutely.
So this is going to be on my my learning curve here for the next few months.
I'm definitely up to help you with that, man. Something that I hope to have done by the end of the year is to produce educational material. It might look like an online course. It might be a guide or something like that to help people sort of do what I just described. We're walking them through, what this looks like and how to do it. I'd love you to help beta test that.
No, I dig it. Yeah, I think one of the things is the way I learn is I have to decide on a project, and then I just keep hammering my head against that project until it's done, and that's how I learn.
Right.
So I got to pick what I really want to do in either aluminum or steel, and then just stick with that until I get through it. But yeah, I'll definitely be bugging you.
You bet, man. There's no shortage of great projects out there right now. ZM9 bolts, bolts for printed PCCs. AR-15 fire control groups is something that is just ripe for doing on the Ghost Gunner, right? There's no shortage of stuff to do. I want to answer a question that I've seen some guy ask twice now, which is, do you need to use the DD tools with the Ghost Gunner, or can you buy your own? And the tooling we use is just the same tooling that you can buy. Like there's nothing special about our tools. So yeah, you can go to Helical or to MSC and buy tooling that'll fit in the Ghost Gunner.
Now, that being stated, there are specific links usually for the code that you all produce, right?
Correct.
I've run across that a couple of times now where you're like, is it the right length? And I'm like, I don't know. Let me find out.
Right. I've been trying for our releases with the AR0, with the G0 to really have stuff in there that'll tell you, okay, make sure that your 1/4-inch end mill has, is a 2.5-inch length, right? Like, let's make sure the length is right. Because when you're running other people's code, you have to make sure you're using the tools that they wrote that code for, or else you can crash the machine, or it might just not work, right? But yeah, these tools you can go and buy yourself from any metal supplier. Similar, like if you're doing our 0%, you can also get the metal from other metal supplier. Like, you do not have to buy the G0 block from us, or the AR0 block. That you just get those from McMaster or whatever. I think it's kind of cool when people do that, actually.
I like that. I mean, ultimately, there again, you don't want to have to be reliant on any one supplier, right? It would be,
well, it kind of goes to the whole open source of 3D printing, the Ghost Gunner, and everything. Just being open about that stuff. You can do whatever you want. Get your parts from wherever you want. It's, like in 3D printing, I could run eSun, or I could run this or that. It's all my personal preference. How you want to do it, you do it your way too.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll know that the open source project will have truly reached fruition when we have people coming to us and saying, "Hey, I developed these feeds and speeds for the Ghost Gunner," and like, "Oh wow, we didn't even know you were doing that." Like the day that happens, I'm going to be really, really happy.
And I'm sure somebody out there is doing it. I could think of a couple of people that are that dedicated to detail that probably are keeping track of everything they're doing.
If those people are listening, reach out, man. Send it to us.
I'll bug a couple of them because I know a few of them have been working on things specifically for the Ghost Gunner, and they're very detail-oriented type individuals. So I'm sure they're keeping track of all of that.
Fantastic. I love it.
So Garret, who builds it? Like, so how big is the core of Defense Distributed? How many people are there? What are their roles? And then, like, is the Ghost Gunner contracted out, or do you guys assemble it? How does that work?
Yeah, at this time, we are assembling it in-house in Austin, Texas. Many of the parts are also milled here. So we do have a couple big Haas CNC machines that we cut some of the actual parts for the Ghost Gunner in-house. Other of those parts, we do contract the parts out, but the actual assembly is all done locally in Austin. I think our line is probably 5 to 10 people. And that's the largest chunk of employees at the company. The company is probably smaller than people think. We've got that line, but then on top of that line, we've got maybe, 5 or so full-time employees working on stuff. We've got a lot of contractors who help me with software and do things like that. But yeah, it's definitely not as big a company as I think a lot of people think.
Cool. Yeah, I was kind of surprised because I was looking through LinkedIn and stuff like that today. I was like, wow, I thought there were more people. I'm like, is that correct?
I think we punch above our weight, perhaps.
Yes. Yeah, it's interesting because, if you don't know what a Ghost Gunner is, you know who Cody Wilson is. And I'm just figuring, there's just, he's like a mini Elon Musk or something like that. There's a huge organization behind him.
Yeah, he put together a pretty decent team of people to realize a lot of the stuff that he comes up with.
Yeah, that's super cool. So what's on the horizon? What's coming up?
Good question. So it's always difficult because there's a lot of cool stuff we're working on that we can't always go public with yet. So there's a big thing that we're excited about related to CNC mills that we can't quite talk about. But when you see it, you might know. For Ghost Gunner stuff specifically, I'm quite interested in more 0% stuff. I know the company is interested as well. I believe the next direction we're going to go is probably going to be 320 related or 365 related. So as some of you guys may know, we are one of the few places that can currently sell the 80% 320 currently, and we are doing that on our Ghost Guns website. But I know we've also for a long time now been hoping to make cut code for a 320 in some form, whether that looks like cutting an 80% 320 into 100%, or whether that looks like just straight up 0% 320, similar to our G0. sort of
Mhm.
remains to be seen.
I
Again,
would love to
360.
see that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that'd be
Yeah.
cool too. My personal EDC is a 320, so I'm into that. Now I'm probably getting a bunch of people making fun of me for carrying a 320, but whatever.
I
Uh,
carry a 320.
Okay,
There's
there we
nothing
go.
wrong with that.
There we go.
I
I've
don't
got
carry
6
my
of them.
320, but yeah.
There
I've
was
got
a
6 of them, and very few of them have serial numbers.
There we go, man. I love it. There was a video recently by HE Cast doing about our G0, and he spent the first 10 minutes shitting on the 320. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. Whatever. I can take
seems
my
to be
lumps.
the bandwagon thing. Actually, I was talking to Jordan about that earlier. I was like, "So what's up with the 320 stuff?" And I was just curious because everybody's been so hard on them lately. With the it goes off whenever it feels like it, and I'm like, I'm not sure I buy into that as much as because I've had 2 and they've never bit me. So
Got a really spicy joke about that. How spicy can I be on this show?
I don't care.
I remember I was saying, like, wait, you're telling me that my gun goes off and kills cops and that's a bad thing?
Ouch.
extra spicy.
Yeah.
But yeah, both of mine are MUPs, so I'm not sure if it wouldn't be the first time that we had homemade designs that were better than the originals. So nothing surprises me at this point.
Yeah. So yeah, the 320 stuff or 365 stuff. Given our analysis, it actually is probably more realistic to do an 80% 365 on the Ghost Gunner into 100%. But again, because we can do 0%, why not just do 0%? So these are some of the avenues that we're looking down. I see someone asked about optic slide cuts on the Ghost Gunner.
Yeah.
We actually did release. It's probably close to a year ago now, maybe not that long, but
it was
we
a while
released,
ago.
Yeah. Optic cuts on the Ghost Gunner for a specific Glock slide and a specific cut. It was the RMR standard. But at the time we promised, we will release other standards and we'll release other slides as well. And that is still being worked on internally also. I think we even have something close to being ready. I'm not sure exactly when that'll come out, but yeah, at some point we're going to have it where you open up DD Cut and it'll be like, okay, what slide do you got? What platform, what optic do you want to put on there? Do you want to do a co-witness dovetail? Do you want to, where do you want it exactly on the slide? All of that will be customizable and you'll be able to do that on DD Cut. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, we all love custom.
Yeah.
So last year, SHOT Show, you guys were gonna have a booth and ended up you didn't.
That's correct.
Is that done? SHOT Show's done for you guys?
It is likely the case that we will always find our way back into SHOT Show, but I'm not sure it'll be under the Ghost Gunner brand.
Okay.
People always seem surprised by that, but I remember when it was a big deal that SHOT Show was allowing people that weren't law enforcement or military in.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was a thing for a very long time. You had to be law enforcement to get into SHOT Show, and then they started allowing civilian companies or like civilians to actually show up, like FFLs, regular people, press. So it's not surprising to me at all that they don't like home manufacturers. Like that's not a big stretch for me. Obviously, I'd love to see that change, but I was surprised at how many people were surprised at that. I was like, guys, it's not like that's a real old club that we're not part of. All right.
Yeah. There's a sense in which it was a return to form because even outside of just not being law enforcement, like the first time Cody tried to go to SHOT Show in like 2015, they kicked him out as well, right? So
you mean just as an attendee?
I think he tried to get a booth, he couldn't get one, and so he did then come as an attendee. But yeah, he was not able at the first attempt to get an actual booth there. And it took us some work to get that booth. And so then, pulling that booth back, it's like, okay, well, we're back where we started, essentially. What was more disappointing to me was that was not going to be the only 3D booth at SHOT. So like there were going to be several 3D printed gun booths at SHOT proper, right? And those all also, lost their booth or pulled out or something like that, right?
Yeah, there was collective outcry for about a week.
Correct. And I was very excited about the idea of having that kind of representation at SHOT Show, like getting on the map in that way. And, that's probably a large reason why they took all those booths away, was to avoid that happening. They don't want 3D printing to get that level of platform and attention.
They don't want the rabble in there.
Right. Well, why do certain places not want to sell their parts kits, right? Like, why do they not want the free money that'll come with parts kits? In part, it's because they fear that this will harm their overall bottom line if everybody starts building their own guns. And I think we all know that's a little ridiculous. Like,
It is.
It should be a winning proposal to sell parts kits, but
Right,
they
right.
have that fear, and that same fear is what's leading them to just resist it by kicking people like us out of shot.
And I think it's one of those things where you have people that will never pay full freight.
Mhm.
They want to do it themselves. They want to, like, way back when I built my own Bitcoin miners and I was mining. And realistically, if I took that $3,000 when Bitcoin was $10 a Bitcoin BTC and invested it, I would have made more money than building the miners, doing it. But I liked the whole, building my own mining rig.
Absolutely.
That I learned something, I did something, it was interesting, it was more of a hobby as opposed to, like, financially investing in something, writing a check
So
and doing it.
real quick, I saw Ron had a question about bolt actions and not being 22. Not traditional bolt actions, not that I've seen, but we do have a couple of straight pull AR builds that have chopped bolts. Swarm Tech's Monarch, thank you, is a more traditional style with the charging handle back on the right, so you have that more of a bolt action feel to it. Or you have what is it, 3D Arms pump action. Middleton and 3D Arms did their pump action, which is also
the
sort
apple
of
pie.
that's sort of a bolt action in a sense, but that's more of a pump than a bolt action. But yeah, Swarm Tech's, you can build that in pretty much any rifle caliber. I think he went up to 4.58 at one point. So yeah, it exists, but it's not like a traditional like Remington chassis.
Jeff Rod has that. It actually looks like a bolt action. I think it's called the Barbie, Barbi. I think once again it's a Jeff Rod design, so it's not really been officially released.
Nor will it ever be. But
yeah, but that doesn't mean the files aren't available. I think he does
Right.
have the files available on his site. But yeah, that is more of a what you expect out of a bolt action. It's not a straight pull, and that's, I think, chambered in 5.56.
Yeah, and I think 3D Arms is working on some mostly DIY or close to mostly DIY 50 cal. He showed a video of it not too long ago.
He
Well,
probably is.
So are you talking about the Slam Fire or something else?
One of them was Slamfire. Yeah.
Yeah, that it's funny. I just watched the video recently. So what I'm interested in, so 3D Arms, I actually want to speak with him. He was on Dark Show last week, I think, and he's got the Bobcat, which it's not roller delay blowback, it's flapper delay blowback, but
Yeah. I mean, it's got
it
rollers
works
in it.
like roller delay blowback.
Yeah.
So I was
I have
interested in
one. It's
that.
sitting right here.
It's so
I'll show it if we could.
what he's doing is he's the AR9 bolt, he's machining two areas, two, divots in. Like, oh my gosh, that would be great on the Ghost Gunner. You could just have the cutter come in and, cut that out. Because right now you're printing a template and you're going in with your Dremel and
It's
I'm
a
like,
little messy.
yeah, I'm like, I don't want to do that. I want to chuck it into a Ghost Gunner, hit a button, and just
I could
go.
probably
the
knock
easy
that
button.
code out like in an evening once that's finalized. I need to get into contact with the guy. I'll probably
I
see
mean,
him
it's
at the
pretty
meetup.
close. Like he's got it in beta now, but it's running great. So I think at this point it's just cosmetic things that need to be tuned.
I'm gonna ask him about that. That sounds cool.
Yeah, but it would be a real quick project for y'all probably to get that added as a GG code because
Yeah,
you
the
would
most
just need
difficult thing will just
something.
be fixturing it.
Yeah, you would just need some sort of probably printable template, just to hold it.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's just two ovals on either side of the AR9 bolt. It would probably be cake.
What's he doing it with right now? Just like a Dremel?
It's a Dremel. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
there
did it
you
with
go.
a Dremel. I don't know what everybody else. I think one person at least used a like a cutting wheel, like with a grinder,
Mhm.
but like a proper machine grinder. But I used just a regular old Dremel with a wheel.
Right. Yeah, that's cool. That's such a cool gun.
that
Like
was-
I want to join that beta.
My wife comes home, and the dog, who sleeps 23 and a half hours a day, is all sorts of nimble, jumps up and runs around. And so I'm always like, if I close the door to my office, it gets too hot in here.
We
So
can tell who the dog prefers.
Yeah. So, oh my God, yes. Yeah. So, and my wife wants to adopt a cat now. So I'm like, oh.
Talk to Danny Meatball about that. He can tell you all about adopting animals.
What, he's got a whole farm?
Yeah,
Pretty
he's got
much,
like
yeah.
6 or 7 different pets, I think.
At any given time. Yeah. He brought a couple of them with him to Maker's Match, not this last time, but in St. Augustine. He had a couple of pups with him. Good dogs.
Yeah.
But yeah, apparently he's got like a whole farm.
Yeah,
Really?
so I've been sitting on Ghost Gunner 3, so I need to do an upgrade to the 3S, and if I could just machine something, I would be out of my mind excited. Like if it wasn't just push your dummy, like if I could design and get something done, I guess I'll have to learn Fusion 360 as opposed to Tinkercad.
Yeah, you should have done that years ago, but
there are some sort of easy stepping stones into it, where it's often useful to think you can do 2D machining or 3D machining, right? So when you do something with Send Cut Send, that's 2D machining because you're just cutting a 2D shape out of your plate.
Yeah.
Well, you can do that on a Ghost Gunner as well. And you know, I'm going to do it on Send Cut Send because it's easier and cheaper, but you could do it on a Ghost Gunner. And maybe that's a good learning experience for you.
Right.
And we already have a tombstone design. A tombstone is a fixture that you can use to mount like a metal plate to do this sort of 2D cutting on. We have that design. And from there, you just sort of put your 2D design in Fusion on that metal plate, and you just plug in your cut go. Like it's a very easy first machining project. That'd be a good way to get started.
that might be something I could do too, because then I could release the code for the reinforcements for the 37 millimeter.
Absolutely.
And people could make those at home instead of having to send out for them, because a bunch of people have asked me for kits, this, that, and the other. I'm like, guys, I don't do this. I don't run a store or anything like that. Like, I have some stickers and t-shirts. That's as far as I'm going with this. But if they could cut it at home, that would be even better.
Absolutely. You could do that on the machine. And that's a good stepping stone into doing the real valuable thing on the Ghost Gunner, which is the 3D machining, where you're doing things like cutting a bolt or rails or something like that.
And I just thought of what
so cool to do.
Yeah, I have a project in mind now, so it's all over.
Hit me up, man. Let's talk about it.
Cool.
Yeah,
All right, we're getting close to 6, or a little after 6, so I want to wrap it up. Actually, Jason, you haven't talked a whole lot. Anything you want to share with us, and in closing?
Yeah, the biggest thing is that for me, there's a lot of people that have wanted some of my content and it got taken down from YouTube. That's all available over at Freedom Crew University. Release those as downloadables, and they're pretty cheap. But yeah, if you want to see all that old content and start building your own guns, go over there. You have my videos out there. Marine Gun Builders, he's got his videos out there, and we're working on new stuff. I'm looking on the bench over there at a project that I got to finish for a new video, updating one of my old ones. And then I'm working on some original content over there at Freedom Crew University that, well, let's just face it, is not going to fly on YouTube.
Yeah. It sucks. Like I was hoping to sneak it under the radar. I called it the Easy Bake AR-15 oven, and YouTube did not like my video, so I released a short.
This point,
so AR-15 is going to be at the top of their match list, man. Like that's a key word they're going to flag.
Yeah,
there's how do I trigger all their metadata at once?
Yeah. Well, hey, you know what's funny? I just saw on YouTube that you can now do a class to get your strikes taken away.
What?
They're working on that. Yeah,
like defensive driver.
Well, for me, it's kind of like
YouTube
Big Bang Theory, where you used to have to take the class from Sheldon to get your strikes taken away. It's like YouTube starting to work on that type of thing. But
Oh god.
I don't know. I haven't seen the video yet, but I just saw it in my my studio today, so it'll be interesting. See if they do
Well,
that.
so my first strike that I got was when the 0% lower came out. I just did a talking head video. I'm playing the video in the background. I'm in like little insert in the corner, and I'm talking about. And I didn't show the whole video. I showed clips, and even the entire video that Defense Distributed had on YouTube did not show how to manufacture it. You saw a couple of tool passes, and that was it.
Oh,
They pulled. Yeah, they pulled my video. They said I'm showing how to build firearms. I'm like, yeah,
a lot
nothing
of
was
that
built.
a lot of that has happened. What's really weird is the videos of mine that got taken down. I've taken clips and made shorts out of them, and they monetized them. It's
That's
just a
stupid.
video, just in 30-second increments. They
That's
monetized, but
insane.
I mean,
Hey,
returning to our
anyways.
conversation at the beginning of the show, right? About how the uncertainty is the point. Like they're not attempting to make clear law. Like it's not that, like the
Mhm,
government is the
mhm.
only person doing that, right? Like it's the same
Right,
thing with YouTube.
right.
People go back and forth about, can I hold a gun on stream? How long can I have it on stream? Can I show it? That's not the point. Like if they want to take it down, they'll take it down.
Right, right.
Exactly.
Good point. You're right about that, because I was actually on a stream last week where they're like, "Oh, and look at this." I'm like, I'm texting the guy, his cell phone. I'm like, "Dude, what are you doing there? What's going on?"
yeah.
He's like, "Yeah, this has worked." I'm like, "Okay." So, Jason, we kind of forked off in a tangent. So how can people find you?
You can find me. All you have to do is just Google the Rogue Banshee. You'll run into me. You'll run into my webpage or YouTube, Instagram. I got my Instagram account kind of. There's been a tiff, but I have another Instagram account I had to spin up, so it's the Rogue Banshee Media. I've got a
Mhm.
lifetime ban on TikTok, but that username came back up and they let me register it under another phone number. So maybe it'll come back. But yeah, just YouTube is the Rogue Banshee, or go to Freedom Crew University to see all the other stuff that got taken down.
Yep. All right. So, Xander, what have you been up to? What are your plans, and where can people find you?
Dude, I've just been trying to keep up lately. I'm so backlogged on projects. I do have some uploads going through the DefCAD approval process right now, getting those rails up there for the alloy, the border, the 37 millimeter remix with the reinforced pressure plate and hinges. That's getting uploaded. I've got a handful of other things. Oh, the CNC trigger and hammer pack for the NT79 is up, and the border, which helps with some reliability issues from the original printed trigger pack or hammer pack. But I've got a couple of more, we'll call them more practical designs that I'm working on. One of them's a PCC. I'm working with one other guy on that. That should be coming out here pretty soon. The LARP quality is going to be amazing. And then another AR-15 design that should be similar to like an ARC, but radically different in its assembly.
Nice.
I'm trying to move away from the threaded rods. I'm trying to lighten it up as much as I can without making it non-feasible. So that should be hopefully here by the end of the year. But I'm doing that completely solo, so I'm slow.
Cool.
But aside from all that, I've been trying to do some more cyber-related content. I've been teaching people about different technologies. I'm going to start doing more short videos on things like the Flipper Zero, how to use Raspberry Pis effectively. I know we all laugh at it, but there's tons of people out there that see it but have no idea what it is or how it works. I made a 37 millimeter shell for a de-author the other day just because I thought it would be funny. So yeah, I'm going to be doing some more like 5th generational warfare stuff, just for the people that are interested, communication stuff, general nerdiness, just to try and diversify from just 3D printing.
Cool. And where can people find you?
Cron on everything. Yeah, I don't do a lot of YouTube because it feels like trying to empty the ocean with a plastic cup. But Twitter, IG, Matrix, Rocket Chat, whatever source or platform you're on, I'm probably on there under Cron. So
cool. And Garrett?
Yeah. So to find me, you can email me at at defdist.org. That's golf whiskey at defdist.org. I think my username on most platforms is GW-DD, which is a pretty shitty username. That's hard to type and confusing. I need to change that. But that's me on Element. That's me on Discord as well. So you can hit me up there. But honestly, it might be better to just email me in case you typo that username.
Cool. All right, guys. Hey, thanks for joining us, and that's it for the show. Everybody, hang out.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you much, man. I
Yeah,
enjoyed being
they're
on
great.
here.